Hello, I'm Chip Judd. I've been a pastor and counselor for over 40 years. I've preached about 4,000 sermons, and I've met with individuals, marriages, church leaders, all kinds of people for over 12,000 hours of face-to-face meetings. As a consultant and coach, I've worked with many different kinds of churches. I've seen them from what I call behind the curtain, from a perspective the public doesn't see. I've seen really healthy, thriving congregations, and I've seen profoundly unhealthy, struggling congregations. I've never seen a perfect one. I'm committed and excited about the church learning to use all the tools that are available to us in helping people experience the real freedom and lasting change that Christianity promises. Some of those tools have been discovered and developed in the mental health community based on psychology and other sciences. Let's stop pretending we have to have all the answers. Let's lead the way in building partnerships and learning communities that bring the mental health community and the church together. That's what we're going to be working toward on this podcast and YouTube. Welcome to the mental health and the mission of the church community. Hey everybody, thank you to the podcast and YouTube. We've got a really cool, exciting, challenging conversation we're going to have today. And we're going to talk to the awesome, brave, strong lady, Lauren's her name, and you'll meet her in a minute, who made the decision to donate her husband's lungs to me. And you've heard the story of what Colleen and I have walked through together. So we're going to talk to Lauren today. And it's going to be exciting, going to be just different and powerful. And glad you're going to be hooking up with us. Thank you. All right, who we're going to have on the call with us today, or the show or episode, or whatever you're supposed to call these things, is, and again, I hate to have to tell you this, but Joey's going to be on here. and I know many of you are disappointed about that.
Sorry, everybody.
But my wonderful wife, Colleen, is going to be on here. And a really, really special guest is Lauren Trainer. And she's in Baltimore area or Maryland for sure, right?
Maryland, yeah.
All right. And I already told you what we're going to be talking about. So just wanted to introduce you to them and get into the conversation today. Joey's going to kind of direct us a little bit with some kind of nudging questions or topics. And we're just going to have an interesting, powerful conversation.
Yeah. Man, this is, I think we got probably the only laughs in for this episode unless we're able to turn a corner after we talk about all of this and get to a lighthearted moment. But this is really a heavy conversation. I'd love for the listeners to know, Lauren, just what your connection is to Chip, like a little history lesson for people. How do you know him, and why were you persistent? And I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm pretty sure when your husband passed, you knew right away that you wanted Chip to have those lungs.
Yeah. Hi, everybody, and thank you for having me here, guys. So my connection to Chip is through my best friend that I met in sixth grade, and we grew up together. She lived in the back of the neighborhood. I lived in the front. We met each other on the first day of sixth grade at the school bus stop. Her father is Chip's former college roommate and also one of his dear close friends. So I knew of Chip through mostly stories and just, catching up with my friend Heather and her family. And I met them also when I was younger. I think you all visited Maryland. I don't remember much about the meeting. I was young and, it would have been a quick kind of in passing. You guys might have been headed out to dinner or who knows. But I had seen the Facebook post that you all shared. Chip, you shared and went kind of public with your health condition. And that wasn't front of mind, actually. I don't know how much in detail you want me to tell you about the story of how it all came to be. Heather really connected the dots for me in the hospital and reminded me about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want me to delve into that detail, or do you want to?
Yeah, we'll get there in a second.
Okay.
I want to know just right up top before we get into the story, and answer it however you want. But how are you doing currently? I mean, you have suffered a tragic loss, and you're not even, well, I guess you're over a half a year into the grief. Like, how would you describe how your heart and soul is right now?
About 9 months, as of yesterday, actually. The date of the incident was 12/14. He wasn't officially pronounced dead until 12/17, but I'm counting based on the 14th when the accident happened.
Yep.
It's so hard to say, like, there's no simple answer of how I'm doing. I would say I'm doing okay. I truly understand what day by day means now. It's, if I were to look at all of this from a macro level, and it's awful and terrifying, and it will crush me, but I don't. I tend to really be cognizant of how I frame things every single day, because that is what I think allowed me to, be as strong as I've been able to be for my kids, and to really still see the blessings that are in life. And I think there are still so many, and really understand, why all this has happened in my life, and try and understand what the journey is supposed to mean. What is my purpose in here? What was his purpose? What's the purpose for our children? I think that's where I'm at. Grief is so complicated, and it's different for everybody. And who knows? I'm probably still in shock too. It's, even though it's been 9 months, like a lot of people say the second year is the hardest. And I wouldn't be surprised by that. Actually, just recently, I've had moments where I've cried more than I did in the first 2 months. So, but I think I'm doing okay. Like, I still laugh, and I still enjoy life and people and so many things. And I still have hope for the future, and I'm optimistic about so many things. And I feel him. I feel his spirit, and the memories are still so vivid. And that brings me, every emotion: peace, comfort, joy, sadness, anger, all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. How long were you guys married, Lauren?
We were married 14 and a half years, and we were together 21 and a half. So we've been dating 7 years.
Yeah. Do you want to give people a ballpark of y'all's ages, like how old he was when he passed away and how old you are now, or just are you fine with giving us your exact age?
Yeah.
Just so people have a reference point.
No problem. Yeah. So he was 7 years older. He died at 51. I was 44 when the accident happened. I'm 45 now. Yeah.
Gotcha. And obviously, like you nailed it. I mean, and Chip, you can even jump in and say, Joey, these are the dumbest questions ever. You're asking questions about grief, for crying out loud. But I think you understand where I'm coming from, Lauren. How are your kids doing, just in general, to your best knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to say this family went through a tragedy not that long ago, and everyone asked how the kids are doing. Not my kids, but relatives. And, we would always, kids look like they're doing fine, and we base that answer on, like, how we know they're doing, how they look. And people also always say kids are resilient. And I don't know if I love that answer either, because, it's scary as a parent. I want my kids to be resilient, and I'm going to do everything I can to teach them what resilience is. But I don't necessarily think that's what happens. I think for kids, they just are compartmentalized differently and processed in a completely different way. And how do you really know how death feels and what it means if you haven't experienced it? And most kids haven't. And even if you have, the way you experience it is different based on your relationship. So my kids have never felt the loss of a parent. They would never know what that feels like. and you don't until I truly think that's why they go through life. And again, the day by day, going back to that, like, I think in their minds, it goes through their mind all day long, because it goes through my mind also all day long. But, I do think they're doing well, because they, they are, they're in activities, they're in sports, and they're thriving there, and they're thriving in school, and we still have goals, and we still have, aspirations to be great and do great things. And we still talk about Dad like he was here today. You talk about a mess that we could still see in the garage that he left, or someone stole his shaving cream because there was 8 cans of it. There are times where it feels like, wow, we're okay. We're going to be okay. And then there are times where I can't imagine how they're able to get through a day, and how it's going to be all okay in the end for them.
Yeah. How many are there, and what ages are they?
We have 3 kids together. There's 14, 12, and 10. Okay. So they all just turned that ages and those ages in the summer.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And Joey, there's what you were saying a minute ago about your questions. Part of this, the purpose of this is to just honor Lauren and honor the gift and the sacrifice. And I'm alive because of a choice that she made. And it's hard to, Colleen, I don't know how many months before the transplant, or maybe even a year or couple, I don't know. But we were praying one day, and we were praying about the transplant. And Colleen started crying. And I don't know if I've ever told you this, Lauren. And Colleen started crying, and I said, "Baby, what's up?" She said, "I just realized that for you to get lungs, another family has to suffer." And it as dumb as it sounds, that it just hadn't hit me. And this is a couple of years before the transplant. And so since then, or up until the transplant, and of course now we pray for you differently, but we prayed virtually every day for that transplant family. And God, whatever's going to happen that we get lungs, please be with the family. And I just, I just want Lauren to know, and I want the people that are listening to know that you've heard my side of the story and how grateful we are. Well, this is the person sitting in front of you that courageously made that possible. And I just want to honor her. And Lauren, I want you to feel comfortable going wherever you want to go, because part of the purpose of this is just to honor you and give people insight into how the journey has been for you. And we just appreciate you, period. But we appreciate you being willing to do this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do y'all have any memories of her as a little girl?
I don't.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. I remember being out. Here's what I mean. I remember being out in their paved driveway area.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember meeting some of the kids' friends. So it's possible that's when I met her, but I don't really remember.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember that it happened, and I remember where they lived at the time. And by the way, I'm going to use something you said, Lauren, on Mark. You said that they lived in the back of you lived in the front. So I'm going to use that on Mark, that Lauren's family lived up front, you lived way in the back.
Colleen, did that revelation just hit you out of nowhere? Were you praying? Were you exercising?
It did.
Do you even remember?
I do. We were, like you said, we were praying early one morning, and that hit me, that I hate for another family to have to lose someone for us to get lungs. And when I shared it with Chip, his response was, wow, he was kind of like, that's right. But his response was, that's above our pay grade. So all we can do is leave it up to God how I get the lungs. But we can pray, then we started praying for the donor's family daily. And never dreaming it would be somebody we had met before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lauren, I don't know if I've told you this, but even my transplant team every doctor and nurse we've talked to, they have never heard a story like this one. Never.
Yeah.
I mean, I would probably say 3 out of 4 people I tell the story to just start crying when they hear the story.
Yeah.
And it's just got layers to it that are just have God's hands all over them.
So many. So many layers.
Yeah, and not that God took PJ or any of that kind of stuff, but God used a horrible situation to bring good out of it.
Yeah, and that's how I also look at it, with that same lens. And, I appreciate the prayers, and I'll take them from everybody, because God knows we need them. And I feel lifted up in this through God. I really do.
Sure.
And,
Sure.
There's just so many miraculous kind of stories, and the people that have been crossed our paths through this tragedy have been amazing. I never wanted to be in this, but when you have something that happens that's so bad, for me, I was telling you this before, Chip, like, you just let go of your control, right? You're not in control. And when that happens, I'm just open to all these things, all these people coming in front of me, the doctors, the surgeons, the OTs, PTs, the nurses, the strangers that deliver food to my house and then start a conversation, and their connection. Like, it's so remarkable. It really is just, and I never feel like I never have wanted to. I look at it, I think, like you do. This event happened and it was horrible. And I'm very grateful that PJ was a donor, because I really never even understood how much, like, he was able, his organs went to 5 different men and saved their lives.
Wow.
As far as I know, everyone's doing well. And he was so healthy. Wow. And I would like to believe that his lungs were probably the strongest out of all of them. And that helps us to feel like there's something more than this, and the ending, the tragedy and the ending. There's an extension of his life, and there's an extension of, a connection to your life and whatever you do with it, and no pressure there. But, I want, like, it feels like there's something so much more powerful and meaningful than the tragedy and where that happened and started.
Yeah. I want there to be pressure on you, Chip. Don't drop the ball, man. Do not drop the ball.
But Lauren, I also want to add, Lauren, for you. I mean, there are not words to express our gratitude for the lungs that PJ donated, but I don't ever want you to underestimate our appreciation and the generosity in the midst of grief and thoughtfulness that you exuded through this whole thing. I'm just completely humbled and blown away by the whole process.
Thank you, Colleen. I'm really, it isn't me, and the event, like, when I look at, like, how things happened, so he shot himself, and I was right with him, and I tried to stop him, and I reached my arm out, and we were both flown. He didn't die right away. He was breathing. They flew us both to shock trauma on 2 different helicopters. We ended up in Baltimore in ICU. I ended up just losing 2 pieces of my bone in my wrist, and that's also a miracle in and of itself, how that close range bullet went through in one side and out the other, and didn't hit a tendon and didn't hit any kind of artery, muscle, all the things. And bone can be easily fixed the most. And we end up in the hospital together on the same floor, and I wouldn't have had that any other way either. Like, the people that I got to see that saw him and then me. It, like, when I look back, I think about, like, seeing all the people that he loved, and for me to be able to be in that hospital at the same time, and everyone visiting both of us. And then, like, I called Heather and told her what had happened, and she decided I think she went to go to bed. and decided she was going to fly in. So she flew and just came in the room the next day, I think. This was like a Saturday and my first surgery, and she was there, I think, a Sunday. And then everything was so fast, and we knew he wasn't going to make it. And so then the people who worked for the donations came in, and she was there, and and I was very aware and cognizant, I was aware. You're in a fog, but you're not. You're still in shock. So like this happened, but I'm still my normal person. I'm a mom. I've got 3 kids and figuring everything out. And she comes in, and they're talking about the donations, and they said, do you know anyone who would maybe you'd want to donate to? And in that moment, I'm like, oh yeah, let me look. There's like a neighbor who needed something I knew of, and my husband was a police officer, and my sister's a police officer. She was there, and she had reached out to the FOP site and had a list of this man who was a police officer local and in need of a kidney. And then the fact that Heather was there in that moment, and she said, Lauren, Chip. And I was like, yeah. And like when you're in this situation, it's awful, but you are able to help somebody. That's all you ever want to do, right? You want to help. Everybody's helping you, and you want to also help. And so to be able to pick somebody that you knew or have a choice there, otherwise, yeah, it would be great. I'd get to meet some other person, but I would absolutely list everyone I knew in that moment. And then I think the miracle, if you look at all the things, the fact that understanding how the recipient, Chip, that you had to have the same kind of size cavity to fit, and your stature was similar to his, and I mean, all the things, and your age probably wouldn't have made you eligible to get 2 lungs, but because you knew, those are the things where, and Heather was that piece right in the middle of, between you and I, because to be honest, I probably wouldn't have remembered if she wasn't there, and she reminded me, and then it all just went from there. And then just to follow along in your story of how it's been working and how you're healing, I'm praying for you guys and all of this. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
I want to, at some point, give you an opportunity to tell us all the awesome things about PJ, and maybe even a snapshot of how y'all fell in love. I want to just give you a reference point that about 6 years ago, I was in a mental health crisis and was suicidal for about 3 days. And I'm just saying that because I know, obviously I can't get in PJ's shoes, but I know somewhat of the depths of that sort of pain and what it feels like. Chip was pretty instrumental in helping me through that, but I was out of commission for months. And I'm curious, because people who struggle in their mental health, I mean, that's a very, very soft spot in my heart for that. Did he have a history with mental health issues? Was it situational? Was he having a hard couple of months? What's the storyline there leading up to his death?
So he did not have any mental health history, anything that we know of. In fact, to be a police officer, you go through psychological testing, and each time you have an incident, you also get evaluated. How in depth those are, I really don't know. He worked for 2 different departments. He just got hired for the second one, and he would have had to do all of that kind of background checks and all of those things. He was a very stable, I mean, I would say he was crazy. I would say I'm a little crazy. We all have the, but that was the part of him I loved. He was this very stable, strong, poised man. He loved, helping other people. He talked people out of suicide, several of them. He saved people's lives a lot of different people in his career, and personally too, friends and people he knew, family members. Every time we got a phone call that was a weird after hours, usually somebody in some kind of trouble, whether they did something wrong and they needed advice from a legal perspective, or he was that guy. And so it makes it all the more shocking to to accept this, that he became victim to this. I call it an acute mental health, um, a mental health. I mean, I think he was in a state of psychosis. Um, but, for the kids and oversimplifying it, I say he had an acute mental health issue, and over a week time. And I don't think he was really suicidal. Like there are, I could tell you this story, but essentially, I think it's personally, we're trying to apply for, it's PSOB, Police Officer Safety. You're going to have to edit this because I'm forgetting, Police Survivor of Benefits program, in order to get these benefits. In 2022, they passed legislation to include suicide as line of duty if you can prove that there was PTSD for a job-related incident.
Right.
He did have an active shooter scenario that he was the first responder to 2.5, almost 3 years ago. And it would have been actually 3 years ago in May. And, the hard part is he was masking any kind of real symptoms. But he had a long career of a bunch of other things with incidents, and our family experienced the tragic loss of both his sister and brother-in-law in an accident that orphaned their 3 kids. And then his mother died a year and a half after that. And then within months, his father became ill and unable to walk and had to be cared for, refused to go in a hospital. So they were figuring out care, and he was one of the primary caretakers, along with his 2 sisters. So all of that, I think those stressors, I think he was really good at dealing with the stresses of his job and taking his vest off and coming home and being a dad and being a brother and, a father, all the things in the husband that he did great. And then when the personal things started getting layered in there, I think he didn't know how to deal with these things that were hurting, these things that were happening and hurting. I don't know. You never know, right? I don't know what really led to it, but that's what I believe. It's cumulative PTSD from things he experienced on the job and work and things in his personal life. And, what happened the week leading up to his death is he started to go into a paranoid state of psychosis where he was delusional and started to have a fear of being incarcerated himself. And he flipped from being the police officer to being the bad guy. And all of a sudden, every minor infraction, not turning in old equipment, not clocking in exactly when you started or ended, or every little thing he'd ever done was flooding his consciousness. And he started to think he was going to get arrested. And it was crazy, but it was believable at first. And then each day it got a little bit more extreme before I realized, it was almost 2 days in before I realized, like, hey, there's something wrong. This isn't right. And by Wednesday, he checked into work and left, told them he wasn't comfortable being there, and he thought he was going to have his gun taken away, and he thought he was going to be taken in. And he went and sat in his car for over 12 hours. And yeah, and maybe he was going to do it then. I don't know. He wouldn't answer my calls or texts. I thought that he was at work, but then I thought he might be getting investigated. And I finally reached out to some people that were close, and also police officers that were friends of his. They were able to get in touch with him. He answered, and they found where he was. And it took hours more. And his higher ups came and talked to him, and he eventually came home and slept and woke up the next day a little better. Um, but then he'd go right back into the paranoid state. And we got him to see a psychiatrist on Friday, and he was evaluated. Again, very good at what he did, probably masking over. The guy brought me in after their session and just kind of, was making sure I knew all the details and what he had gotten. And he's like, yeah, I think that he's, upstanding guy. He's just had some stress in life and, dealing with some stuff and not sleeping well. And then I said, did he tell you how he thought he was going to get arrested and he thought our house was surrounded? And then my husband hit me with his knee, nudged me under the table. And I just put my hand on his leg and I looked at him and I said, we're in a safe place. It's okay. We're here for help because you're okay. You haven't done anything wrong. And we had hired this guy off the record, out of insurance, out in like a way far place from where we lived, from where we worked. So he felt that security. No one brought phones in. He was thinking we were being recorded. And we left there, and on the way home, we went out to lunch. We probably shouldn't have, because at the end of lunch, he started to get tired and stressed out and overstimulated, and he started to have anxiety, which he never even had anxiety before in his whole life, like that ever. Like he looked like he could care less. Nothing would faze him. He could run into a fire, and he would never freak out or show that stress ever. It's what he was really good at. He was very poised. And I, tried to calm him down. And before we went, I forgot this was one of the key things, because this is so critical in just understanding what he was going through. That we saw that psychiatrist on Friday afternoon, and he had gotten really good sleep finally that Thursday night into Friday. And he seemed normal when he woke up for the first time in 5 days. And he was sitting on the couch, and he was just rubbing his temples, and he said, I can't tell the difference between what's real and what's not. And that's like all I knew I already knew, but he was so convincing with some of the stuff he was saying in the beginning that I was validating it all. Like, what did you do? Why'd you do that? Like, but then I was like, wait a second, he hasn't done anything. Like, there's nothing here. And then for him to like be able to describe in a normal state of mind for a short time. And, he must have woke up. He woke up, we locked up his guns earlier after Wednesday night. After that, we got him to put his guns in the safe, take them, which, by the way, that's a whole other thing. If you're a police officer, it's your identity. He carried a gun everywhere he went. He carried a gun to church. He carried a gun down the street, drive everywhere. He was ready to save someone's life. He was ready to get any kind of perpetrator, anybody. That's how he lived. That's just how he was. And when you're a police officer, that's a huge piece of who you are. And to take his gun away, and we weren't, I was just me and his sister, and we got him to lock it up. At this time, I don't even know the safe. I don't even know how to open it. I've never opened it in my life. And obviously, he knew the code. I didn't change it. I probably, in hindsight, should have. And he, Friday night, he must have woke up in the middle of the night. He did wake up in the middle of the night. I am a light sleeper, but I had been up so much that week, I didn't even hear him. And it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I feel the bed is empty, and I pop up, and I run downstairs, and he's on the couch. But he's like on the living room couch, which he'd never be there. And he couldn't sleep, and you could tell he was kind of laying down, but like awake and frantic. And I said, what's wrong? He's like, I just can't sleep. And I got him to come back upstairs. I just rubbed his back, rubbed his head, tried to get him to calm down, and he fell asleep again. He woke up again before me, and I came downstairs, and he was at the counter, and he was writing something, and I came and he stopped, and I was like, hi, what are you writing? And I kind of was talking like that because this is odd behavior for him. And now I know he wouldn't be writing anything. So he said nothing. He stood up and he put the paper in his pocket and he kind of backed away from me and backed away across the house opposite of where I was in between the couch. And I followed him outside, and even the way he ran, the way he was eating was different. The way he was running, talking, everything was different. His eyes were different. I mean, there were physical changes and you could see them. And he like ran out, and it was early in the morning Saturday. And I said, PJ, stop. You're scaring me. Please come back. And I broke down. I like went down to my knees, and it was like almost crying, but like a scared voice. And he came back up and then went back into like protector husband mode and was like, it's all right. It's all right. I'm not doing nothing. Look, and he pulled some other thing out of his pocket. And I said, come inside. Come on, let's have some coffee and sit down. And I had reached out to that psychiatrist when we got home the day before. PJ didn't want to do any medicine. He didn't want any help. He was trying to convince this guy that he was fine. I reached back out and I said, I think we need to put him on some medicine. He's not okay. And so he had called that prescription in, and it was a prescription for an antidepressant, which now I've learned like that could have actually exacerbated it. It's not the right thing. But either way, I said, let's go to this store. Let's get this prescription. Let's get it on board so we can start to feel better. And he's like, no, I'm just going to go for a walk. And I knew at that point, like I knew, but I didn't. Like he was already so different all week, and he was paranoid. And I went to go get my shoes on, but I'm keeping him in sight. And I come up, like we have an open house, so I could kind of in another room, but I could see through. And I see him reach up and like get his gun and tuck it in his waistband, which is normal for him. Like if we're going somewhere, that's what he's going to do. But his gun's supposed to be locked up. And he's telling me he wants to go for a walk. And the kids were down, they're awake now, and it's almost Christmas time. I'm writing Christmas cards on the counter and doing their normal Saturday morning things. And he goes outside, and I'm trying not to draw any attention from the kids to it. So I just followed him, and I said, PJ, stop. And I just was pleading with him. And he walks down the steps of our deck, and I grabbed onto his sweatshirt, and I just held him. I mean, he's stronger than me. And I'm pulling him back, and he's walking forward. He's like, let go of me. I'm just going to go in the woods. I said, you stop. Don't do this. I now know, like, I look back and I just wish there were so many other things. Like, had I called somebody that first hour, I think only 30 minutes had passed since I first saw him to where we are now. But, and I was holding him so hard he couldn't get to where he was going, but he wanted to get away from me. And he turned around and looked at me, with the meanest voice and something else in his eyes. And he said, get away from me. And he leaned forward away from me, all like in safety and protection, because I was not letting go. And I just, like, I knew what was happening in slow motion. And I just, you just react. And I just threw my hand out and tried to stop him. And it hit me and then went through him. And, I just knew right then, like, oh my God, you just know it's happening, but it's happening so slowly, and it's so unbelievable, and it's the worst thing you can imagine. So, and when I got hit, I thought he was dead immediately. I looked at him, but I didn't want to see anything that would be so horrific that it was my last sight, but you're just human curiosity. I looked at him, and he looked like he was alive, actually. He had like a feeling on his face. So but I don't, I looked at my hand and I know the kids are inside, and I just saw my hand for a millisecond and I saw the bone, and I didn't want to like pass out or do anything. So I just went into the fight mode, and I just ran inside, and the kids had heard something and they were like, I don't know how much detail you want, or if you
Whatever you're
guys want
willing
me
to
to.
share. Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever you're.
So I went inside, and the kids were just asking, what happened? What happened? And I said, call 911. Well, the phones had gone off. The internet went down. We lost internet in our house,
Oh my
which
gosh.
he's already paranoid. And I wonder if that was his last trigger of him thinking somebody was coming after him. They shut down the phone lines because it beeps and it sends him an alert on his phone. So that happened. So they pick up the phone and it's
Wow.
like the worst sound. I'm like, oh my God. And I run over to the counter and I tourniqueted my arm. And I had the kids bring, one of them had an iPad. And so it was on Wi-Fi. That wouldn't have worked. How did they do this? Well, actually, I had them get Dad's phone. I said, get Dad's phone and get my phone. And they got, I called 911, but I didn't want to say what had happened in front of the kids. So I went outside and I just leaned. I also needed to put pressure I knew on my arm. I tourniqueted in like a dish towel, and but I couldn't move it or do anything. And so I just knelt down on the front patio, and I just pushed my body into my legs to compress my arm. Um, and then I had the phone on the patio on speaker, and the kids were inside, and I just made the 911 call, and by then they got me Dad's phone, and I called my sister and brother-in-law who lived 10 minutes away, and one of the brother-in-law's a police officer and a good friend and knew what was happening. They both did. So they came over, thank God, and the police came, but I'm not exactly sure what I said on the phone. The emergency was that I had been shot because I thought PJ was dead. Um, and so I think that I know I told this story, but I think I started with I've been shot. And so they barricaded out from our house. They didn't bring anyone up to help us. They were kind of far. And the police came very quick, and they were like, come down. And I am like, I know I need to compress this arm. And we live on the top of a hill, and, it's a really long driveway. And they had me and the kids run down to them up the street
So they
to where
thought there might be an active shooter.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I said that I had been shot. My husband shot himself, and I reached my hand out. I know I said it just like that, but I started the call with
Yeah.
I've been shot.
Right.
And I was yelling. I'm like, he needs help. Like and I've since talked to the police officer. I know it's so crazy for everybody in
Yeah.
a scene like that, but yeah. So they rushed me. They called for a medevac. Took me up the street out of the neighborhood to where there was a flat field to land the medevac, and then we were waiting for that, and then somebody came over the radio, and the paramedic came back and said, are you okay if we call a second helicopter and you wait for that? So we have I can't remember how they said it, but weren't explicitly saying it was PJ. And I said, they said, maybe they did. They said, so it said patient number one we need a medevac for patient number one. And I said, is he alive? And they said, yeah, he is right now. And I said, please fly him out. Like, absolutely. And
That
so
was shocking to hear, I bet, right?
it was so shocking, and I already felt like I knew the end. And I don't know how to explain this when you go to pray for something, but you feel like it's not going to happen. I already felt like I knew this was the end. I know I prayed in that ambulance that he would be okay. And, I guess for a second I thought gosh, if there's some good that can come out of me having my arm destroyed, maybe it's I actually saved his life. I know I did feel like that for a day, maybe, because even in the hospital, Saturday he went through a surgery, and there were chances. They said the damage was tremendous, but there was a chance he could live. And I didn't know what state it would have been in, but when you hear that, you hold on to it. And I thought, wow, this was worth something for me to do that and possibly have saved his life. And I still think, there are many blessings that for me have come out of my injury. And one of them is just, I do think that he was able to be alive in that hospital for a little longer because of it. I think if it was a straight, he was the first to receive the bullet, that it would have been more fatal. He knew what he was doing. And I think there was, for to be able to be in that hospital together, and the people that got to be there to see him. I don't know. And in the fact that he didn't die in our house, in our backyard. Like, I think there's so many things where I look at and say, I'm glad it happened this way and not that way.
Yeah. If that doesn't illuminate just how it is a sickness and, the challenge of mental health, and it reminds me of more of like, somebody gets some really bad news, for instance, of like a super aggressive form of cancer, and they're given 2 weeks. Like, that's some intense sickness. Well, that's what happened to your husband, except it was his brain. Like,
yeah.
I mean, Chip, do you have any extra insight from a mental health perspective? Like, does it sound like is it okay if I ask him that, Lauren, as far as
of
like,
course.
does it sound like there was just a buildup of PTSD that just wasn't being addressed?
Yeah, Lauren and I talked a little bit earlier off this call, and there's like everything she's already shared about the last couple of years and what they've been like. And she said on this call a minute ago, I'm trying to think of how you word it, Lauren, something to the effect of, no, it was on our call, I'm sorry, that you said it is just like he wasn't the same person. You said something like that. And, schizophrenia, paranoid, we don't know what the actual diagnosis would be. I don't know what the psychiatrist told you. But, it's lots of ways to look at it, but in a sense, it's different parts of the brain just aren't talking to each other anymore. And the part of the brain that makes sense of reality apparently disconnected from the threat detection part of the brain. And so everything felt like a threat, and there was no moderator. There was nothing managing, and that's mental illness in a textbook. And I'm not saying what I just said was a perfect description, but anybody who lives in the world that PJ lived in for as long as he lived in it, and there's a cost to that.
Yeah.
There's a price you pay. I mean, I had a anxiety burnout, 11 years ago, 12 maybe. And I don't live in that kind of world. I did it to myself just by overscheduling, et cetera, et cetera. But when you live in a world that it kind of immerses you in a level of anxiety, tension, fear. I mean, like you're at a state of alertness that is unnatural. There's a price for that. Your brain pays a price for that, and
Chip
it accumulates.
From someone here, I knew some bare minimum details of the situation. Now hearing from Lauren and her recounting all the details when it comes to let me see how to frame this. I actually lost my train of thought. Hold on one second. I'll get back to that thought, and I'll edit this. I wanted to ask Lauren, has did you already have a good feel and a in-depth knowledge of mental health challenges, or has this been a big time informing situation? Like, has it reframed your thoughts on mental health or suicide in any way?
Yeah, it has completely changed. I think every experience you have, especially one that's this big and traumatic, changes you. And, I personally I lost a cousin to suicide when I was 14. He was 13. We were close. And then I lost another cousin, other side of the family, to suicide when he was 29 and I was 35. And I babysat him, that one. And in both of those situations, and with most suicides, I find that it's so catastrophic because everyone asks why, and everyone carries some kind of guilt, blame. I should have called them. I should have said this. The last time we were together, all the things you go through your head. For PJ, I don't have that because I saw the mental breakdown. I saw that he was mentally not okay and something had taken over. And it's not a question of why did he do this? He was in a psychotic state. He would never in a million years have done this. He would never have done this to hurt me or hurt our kids. He, by definition, what he did for his entire life and who he was a protector. And for, I can't, they're all different, right? I've heard of so many mental illnesses, and a lot of them are over long periods of time and with really present symptoms of, sadness and depression and all these things. He didn't harbor any of those. He didn't show. I spoke at his funeral because I felt this need to explain to people who knew him that he had this. Not a lot of people knew this. This was like what transpired over a week. And I felt like I could connect the dots to help people process this so that they understood and got a glimpse of what I experienced and what I saw. And my kids say this too, if my 10-year-old told her class or told her, she also went to a grief camp this summer and stood up and said, my dad got a mental illness and shot himself. That's the story. The story is one then the other. And so there's kind of a explanation. I don't know why he got that mental illness. It's not that simple, unfortunately. Even if I told you about the events and what he did for a living, there's so many layers of things that make a person and that affect our thinking and our brains. And, who know, it's like a bad combination. When someone says like bad timing, it's also like timing of what the events are when they're coming in, when he was already under stress, But yeah, it's completely changed how I think about it. I think as humans, we always want to understand. So we want this pretty organized picture and understanding in this little box. Oh yeah, you're this, you're that, but it's not that simple. And even though we might be able to say, yeah, this is PTSD-SD or this or that, we'll never know, but it's scary, Joey, actually, because in this case, it's so much more scary because this happened so quickly to a guy who was completely normal the week before. And so I have always had a fear of suicide, probably because I experienced it so young with people so close to me. Now I can't even, if I see somebody in distress in their personal life, I don't want my own, this equals that, I think there's so much I could say about how we can help people. I can go 1,000 different ways on this journey. I think for me, the things that resonate the most are, I think, understanding like how this affects people in the line of policing the most, and all of those different characteristics that they possess that only make it harder to detect, and how that system isn't properly set up with the support it needs
Right.
for how big of how prominent mental health is
Yeah.
for all of us,
Yeah.
and how big of the issue is.
Yeah. Well, and the crazy thing is, in some situations, I'm not sure if it's true in all of them, but just asking questions about your mental health, like going to see someone, in some cases can get your duty assignments changed,
Yes.
your opportunities for promotion. I mean, it can affect your career actually doing the healthiest, smartest thing you could do, which is asking for help.
And your
And,
your gun taken, which going back is
Yeah.
your identity. I mean,
Yeah.
that's your whole everything. And to understand that, I don't know that some people really can, because it's a different kind of
Yeah.
career. It is
Sure.
who they are, and it's who they. It goes deeper than it's a
Yeah.
job that has such a strong identity to
Absolutely.
it.
Well, and you have to be wired for that. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, forgive me if this lands wrong, but like I think, who gets out of bed in the morning, wants to put a gun on, and chase scary people all day?
My husband.
But you have to be. You
I
have to be
used to,
wired.
I used to say I would get annoyed because he would like whistle on his way to work. He would get up at 3 a.m. for a raid. Who likes to wake up at 3 a.m.? And he'd be going to get a drug dealer or murder suspect, and he'd be like, I'm convinced he'd be driving with a smile and a coffee, like,
All right, all right,
whistling
all right,
on the way to work.
Lauren, I thought you told me he was normal. Okay, so a week ago, a week before. That ain't normal, girl.
For people
He loved
that,
his job.
Yeah.
for people who don't see mental health in its right weighty place, I mean, Chip, wouldn't you say? I mean, obviously, we know that he took his life, but wouldn't it make sense? And I love how you articulated what your 10-year-old is able to say, like he got mental illness. Like, Chip, couldn't you say PJ got real sick and passed away? I mean, that to me that makes sense. I mean, I know there's more to the story, but his brain got really sick and he didn't make it.
Yeah.
It was too.
Well,
he was too sick.
A normal everyday person, no, it's not going to work. But if you really understand mental health, if you understand what's involved in maintaining mental health, your brain and relationships, I mean, it's multifaceted, and every area of your life feeds into your mental health. And if you understand it properly and realize the brain is the one who determines whether we make good decisions or bad decisions. Well, if your brain is in a bad place by an illness, it's not like a flu where you got a bacteria or something. It's life events and different things altering whatever. We don't want to get caught up in all that. But I mean, it used to be, and again, don't mean to get on anybody's bad side with this, but used to be that the church's mentality was, if you commit suicide, you can't go to heaven.
Right.
Yeah.
I've always thought that was ridiculous, because God of all people, forgive me, Lord, for calling you one of us, but he understands mental health better than we do. And he knows, as we know, no one in their right mind, as we say. No one in their right mind. Joey, when you got close, you weren't in your right mind. No one in their right mind would take their life, period. End of discussion. So to say your eternal destiny is going to be affected by your worst moment in your worst mental state, that's absurd.
Yeah.
It's just absurd.
And it's funny, I'm Catholic, and I was born and raised Catholic, but my parents kind of veered away from the church, and I stayed on, and I would go to any church, any denomination. I went with Heather and her family to their church. I always had a relationship with God. PJ was also raised Catholic, very much different than I was raised, and very strict. And I mean, when he was in his 50s, his dad was still calling to make sure he attended mass on a holy day. But he always believed. And
Yeah.
when I was young, when my cousin died, I always struggled with that. Like, how could this child, and I was a child, I was the same age, how could we say that he's not going to go to heaven? He's a young kid. You don't even know that you have the ability to do. And I don't think, as a child, I think that's exactly what you don't think you have that power, and you're not doing what you're about to do. You don't think about it. And then when, with PJ, like, I mean, he said the rosary, carried the rosary around in his pocket. It was in his pocket when
Yeah.
when he shot
And that's a
himself.
symbol of faith to a Catholic.
He was that was a huge symbol of faith, and he said the rosary
Absolutely.
every day.
No
Which
matter,
yeah.
no matter what weird, feelings you may have about all that, to a person raised Catholic, that represented a practice that enhanced your connection with God.
Yeah.
And somebody that doesn't want to stay connected to God doesn't carry a rosary in their pocket.
No, he was a true believer, and more, I'd say, one of the most devout people that I know. And, for my kids who are angry, I'm sure, with God, and we still go to church and we still do all the things, but, this is hard. And I wanted to explain to them that I believe that for the people that do go to heaven and that are believers, if you are also a believer, you will feel them, and there is a pathway and there's a connection. And I think that's the gift of faith. I think I feel him. I do. Even though he's not here, I feel him all around me.
Right.
And I want my kids to feel that.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's helpful or not. You would have to determine this, but they're going to see him again. That's one of the cornerstones of our belief system.
Yeah.
That we believe there's life after life. And I remember as a young pastor it wasn't my first funeral, but it was my first up close. Colleen, it was Glenn, Booty and Nadine's son.
Yeah.
It was the first time it was people that I knew the person who had passed, and the family really closely. And I remember when I looked them in the eye in the funeral and said to them, "You will see them again." I remember, how something can happen in a flash, the fashion it can take you to explain it. But in that moment, it's like I had to decide, do you believe that? Do you believe what you're saying? And I do. I believe that we're going to see them again. And that's important. Now, excuse me, Joey, but depending on where the kids are at in processing this and their feelings with God, you may or may not want to share that. You may already have. I don't know. But
they're in Sunday school, and I think they're learning those foundational kind of principles of that belief system. And I think for my perspective, if I were them at that age and they're going to live to be 80, that's a long time. And that's probably not as promising as where I think it's a little bit more tangible to say right now that you can feel him, you can talk to him. And my 10-year-old, again, she's a different personality, but she's more extroverted. And she went skiing this winter and went down her first black diamond. And she told me later that she was talking to Dad the whole way down. And I love that. It was, like, that's what I want them to do. He's always in there. Like, have him in your soul, have him in your memories. But, like, he's here,
Chip, if Lauren was, are they clients? Like, if you're counseling someone, do you call them clients or patients?
I just call them friends or something. I don't know.
Well, if she came to you for counseling,
Now there's a few, Joey. No one in front of a microphone right now that I call by other names.
Okay, gotcha. Behind their back.
I'll say it to their face. I'll say it right now if you want me to.
What?
What were you going to say?
Well, I mean, would it be a reasonable thing to unpack that the gravity of how Lauren lost her husband? I mean, she's dealing with grief, but then the gravity of how she lost him, like that's very significant here. It's not like going to the hospital and being at his bedside for a couple of weeks and then passes away in his sleep. I mean, this was a very, very intense situation. So there's probably, we're talking about you, Lauren, right in front of you, but there's probably a couple of things going on as far as grief and immense PTSD, right?
I don't know. What do you think, Lauren, when you hear that question? What,
I mean, I don't think I have. This goes back to just me and how I am. I don't think I have PTSD. Maybe I would if, I am fearful of people committing suicide because this has happened now 3 times in my life. And it's scary, It's scary to have teenagers who are all over, teenagers too. They're not emotionally stable and they're not cognitively developed or rational, and that's always a fear, like what's going through anyone's head at one time. That part, maybe I have PTSD, but otherwise this is also where not everyone would feel this way, but I'm grateful that I don't have questions of, I don't think that I didn't do everything I possibly could have to save him. Do I think could I have done something better, different? Sure, you could always do that. But I can truly stand here and say that I tried, even when I wasn't thinking. My last effort was to save his life, like to try and stop him, even maybe risking my own safety to do it. And I'm not looking for that like heroism with that. I'm looking like I don't have guilt. I sleep at night. I saw what he looked like right then in his last moment. I don't wonder what he was thinking because it wasn't rational. It wasn't like he went off by himself on this long walk, or it was sitting in a car in a parking lot, and we don't know what he was thinking through his last minutes. I saw the psychotic state, and I'm thankful for that. It helps me to process this. I think it's helped it maybe as much as I believe, like there's grief is crazy and the timing and delay and compartments. It's probably accelerated my processing because it happened right in front of my face, where someone tells you bad news and you're, over and over and over. I play it in my head, but I don't. It's almost like I told you, it was slow motion. Like I knew it was happening. When I play it in my head, I could be like cooking dinner or driving and nothing changes. It's not like I break down all of a sudden. It's just like the story going through, the fact of life to remind you. And just, I don't know why we do that as humans, but it's like, but I don't think, because he was a police officer, we're getting support from all kinds of police organizations, including cops, which is tremendous. And one of the people that I was speaking with was telling me about, I'm going to forget it right now. I can look it up on my phone, but it's something with the eye. And there's this thing you could do. They developed it, I think, back in the 80s with the military. And it can essentially cure someone in a state that had PTSD or saw something. And they were like, you should do that. Rapid eye movement something.
Oh, EMDR? Are you talking about
EMDR? Thank you. Yes, that's it. And I said, I appreciate that, but I don't really think I'm a candidate. Like, I don't need it. Do you think so? Like, if it's no harm in doing it, sure, I'll try it, but I'm not going through. Right now, I'm okay. I just, I don't know why I tend to frame things in an optimistic view and look for, like, the understanding in a good light, not a bad light. And I'm doing that with this. Don't get me wrong, I have moments where I'm like, I don't understand and why. But I also look for, again, I gave up that control and I look for a greater understanding to follow this journey that I'm on and make sure that I'm on still following that right path and doing the right things and seeing the right things while I'm on it. You know, I I can't take it back. Even crying, like, what's the point of it's not changing the event? How can we make this the best it can be? I'm going to look at the blessings. I'm going to look at healing, and I'm going to look at leading my kids to healing. And how can I do that? You know, that I that's the state I'm in today. I pray that I continue this way, but
she has an exceptional posture, right, Chip? I mean, that's not normal
that's what I was just
for
getting
9
ready to
months.
say. Yeah. Cole, you and I talked about it, I mean, even way back at the beginning when we talked the first time. Fancy word reframing, which is basically just how you explain things to yourself.
yeah,
And you do a really good job of that. And you had some, I remember way back then, Colleen, you remember on that call, you shared with us how you presented things with the kids and all. And some of it was just brilliant. You were not, you weren't not telling them the truth,
right.
but you worded it in a way that just was very, it was more carryable, if you will. Like a child those ages could carry it better.
Yeah,
And with emotion, from a counselor's perspective, you look at a couple of things. You look at the appropriateness of the emotion. Is it the right emotion for the situation? You look at the intensity, duration, those kind of things. And you obviously you value strength, and you value. I'm trying to remember how you put it just a second ago. But do you fight, like, conversationally? We ask you a question and you fight, like, taking the answer all, or no, you just answer it. In other words, you don't avoid subjects. You've had some emotion expression on this call. You're not ashamed of your emotions. All that's going to serve you well in short term and long term. The only thing I'd probably say, I don't know if you're going to a counselor now, I know the kids are, but just be honest with yourself at any point where you feel like, I feel like I could use some help processing this. Like you said earlier that you've heard the second year's worse than the first. If you hit somewhere in your second year and it's like, I'm not getting out of this cycle. I need somebody to help me get out of this cycle. I'm not saying you will, but those would be the things I would watch for.
yeah. Again, we have resources that are amazing. I do see a psychotherapist, and two of them actually, and they're amazing. And I started seeing one before for really minor things, just for self-help. And that's, again, destigmatizing mental health, that you don't need to have anything really wrong with you to go see a psychotherapist. That, they used to be called a shrink. Like, that's awful. Like, that, there's that stigma there still. I was seeing it to help with, like, my overscheduling and, like, why I needed to fill my calendar like this, which a million of us do, and it helped me to see, like, okay, this is why I lose my temper and blow up when something doesn't happen. That's why I was going, and to improve my relationship with my husband, and to be the best person I can be. That's why I went. Now, it quickly. I mean, I was really about to tell my therapist, like, hey, I think I've graduated, or whatever that looks like.
Right.
And then all this happened,
That's
and
what
I'm
I
like,
call it.
yeah. Hey, I'm really gonna need you now. And then I picked up another psychotherapist. Actually, my husband had started seeing somebody, and he just had, and we saw a couples therapist, and that couples therapist recommended we each see a personal therapist. And he was resistant for almost a year. And I had started before, and then he finally did it. And he loved her. And he's like, I don't know why I was so resistant and stubborn about this. And then I picked her up because she while you have to protect some of the information, she could also help validate some of my feelings. And she was a link to him, another link to him
Right.
that I
Right.
needed. And I started talking to, I've become, I think, friends. I hope he doesn't mind that I call him that, but therapists that work for where he worked in Prince George's County.
Yeah.
And he led that department and started it. It didn't exist before. And he has been invaluable because he has that unique perspective to understand police work, to
Yeah.
personally have known and had a relationship with my husband,
Right.
and to understand mental health and be a
Sure.
professional in that field. He's been tremendous for me because, I am doing okay, and I am thankfully a talker, and I talk to everybody, and every time it feels like that's healing, whether you're a professional
Hmm.
therapist or not. I get something from that exchange with people.
Yeah.
Heather, I think she should be a
Yeah.
therapist, actually. I always tell her, I'm
Yeah.
like, you're better than my therapist. Like the things that you
She is.
say in
She's a.
your
Yeah.
perspective, I have a
Yeah.
couple of friends like that where
Yeah.
they're therapeutic once you talk to them and you're like,
Yeah.
gosh, that's what I need. And they're honest and I'm honest,
Yeah.
and it's that honest, open exchange where
Yeah.
they'll tell you when you're being out of line, but you know, it's so healing for,
Yeah.
and I will
Yeah.
always, that's why I'm glad that I was seeing somebody before this happened. That's also
Right.
one of the things that I think is where I can see where God was in this the whole time, right? All these
Yeah.
things, if they happened in a different sequence, it would have been a completely different result, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't be here like I am today.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Heather's a really special. Heather's a really special lady.
Yes, she
She
is.
really is. Lauren, by the way, do you have any extra time? You were talking about going to counseling for your overscheduling and stuff. Could you meet with my wife for a little bit?
what does
Kinda,
she need? She
oh,
looks great.
Yes.
What do you need,
we don't
Colleen?
have time. We don't have time. No, I'm kidding.
The over scheduling. Oh
Oh,
gosh, yeah.
I don't know. Colleen, you want to
That
talk to her
was
for a minute, and Joey and I will just be quiet?
yeah.
Yeah, we can bounce for a
No,
little
that
while.
another session.
PJ hated that, and but part of it is I am super ambitious, even like and through the injury. Actually, I was complaining that my hand was hurting, and I was like, these tendons are kind of sore. Is that normal? And they're like, well, how many times are you doing the grip exercises? I was like, well, I keep it in my car. So the other day, it was probably like 2 hours. And they were like, yeah, no, that's the problem. So now they have everything with like a limit. They're like, you're only going to do that 10 reps 3 times a day. That's it. And so I was
Wow.
like, oh, thank you.
Oh.
I tend to overdo it.
Wow.
But
Lauren,
self-awareness, I know that.
I doubt that's common with most of their patients or whatever.
Yeah.
That they have to give them limits on how much they do it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. What were you going to say,
You know,
Joey?
Well, I was just one of my questions that I was gonna ask, and I think it's already been answered, was whether or not you ever struggled with anger towards PJ. And I would imagine because it was so clear that something had gone awry in his mind, that was never even on your radar. That would be my guess with how you've described it. Like, did anger ever
Was
play
So to be more specific, anger's like an emotion I have a lot, even though I'm happy and optimistic and all those things. Anger's a natural, like I'm pretty feisty. I like to think that I get my anger out when I exercise, and if I don't, it can be bad. And PJ got a lot of my anger, and he was also feisty. So the two of us, we were very similar. So it made for some pretty healthy debating, but no, not in this situation. I don't, and that's another thing that I think a lot of people have with suicide that I probably never will with this. Like I've said it before to, I can't be. No, I'm not angry at all. He wouldn't have ever. It's like
Right.
two different people, Joey. It's like there's my husband, and then there's this person that took over his brain.
Yeah.
I bifurcate them. Like they're two separate things for me. And no, I actually feel sad. I feel sad and sorry for him.
Yeah.
Like he was such a tough, strong man, who endured so many things and overcame so many challenges physically, mentally in his career. And he, I'll always think of him as that. And there is some kind of also stigma of like weakness with the mental health, I think, of feeling like you can't ask for help. You can't call for backup,
Right.
I think that plays into like how he ended up getting to where he got without correcting.
Yeah. And that's what I can really relate to, is when I try to relate to the thoughts that I was thinking when I was suicidal. It's like, I know I was thinking those thoughts, but I just can't imagine thinking those thoughts. Like when I was in the hospital looking at pictures of my kids, I seriously was 100% convinced that I was never going to be able to be their dad again, because I was never going to get better again. And now I can't even imagine, like, I almost took my life because I didn't think I would ever be able to be their parent again. That doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't even understand where that was coming from, but it was a different person functioning in there for sure.
And I think I would like to believe, when I think of how can we change this, how can we make this to help other people, that misconception is what I would love to the disease versus illness, that this could be temporary. And if this is temporary, all we need to do is heal you. And however long that takes, that can look different for people. And for some people, that could be permanent. And I think that's so scary. That's what's so scary about it, is I think people think that it's permanent. And I really think that, even though this thing is taken over and it controls your thoughts and words and actions, and it's in an altered state. So if you're in control of yourself, how do you get help when you're not, that regulatory system is completely flipped on its side? It's upside down, but for me, like, to understand, like, this could have been temporary, and if that could have been explained, and if I said that to him, like, I feel like there could have been, to know that there's help, like maybe going into it. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, when people told me that this is temporary and Chip was trying to talk reason to me, I couldn't take it in. Like, I just didn't believe it. I was convinced that it was permanent. So you guys have a plan to get together when?
Late October, is that the right way to say it? Yeah.
So Lauren, it's been awesome, like, getting to know you here, and I'm curious, as a mother with these 3 children that you love so dearly, what are you hoping that visiting with Chip and Colleen and meeting their kids, like, what are you trying to accomplish? Or is that even a bad choice of words? I mean,
No.
Obviously it's a special gathering regardless.
Yeah. I mean, my hope is, with all of this, like I said, it's a journey that I am open to every little thing, and it's a healing process. And I hope that there's healing in that for my kids. Here you can see that there was a terrible event that we experienced as a family, but look at what a beautiful thing that had happened that is connected to this tragedy. That one didn't cause the other, but there's a connection here, and it's positive, and it's great. And with kids, like, that doesn't need to be said out loud. Like, we're not forcing this down their throat. All I want them to do is meet these people, and I know that there's going to be a connection, and there's going to be laughs and love and tears and all the things, but they're going to, I hope, understand how there's beauty in it, just the same way that there's tragedy and sadness and all the things. And this is a beautiful time and a beautiful moment of, Chip is able to live because of something that your dad had and gave to him. They do understand that. They understand that this man is living, but to see it. And also, I think, Chip, I mean, I have listened to your podcast before, but I didn't know that you had a mission for bringing mental health together. I mean, that's like, PJ was always about God and serving, but the mental health piece, that wasn't a thing we had to worry about until the last week. And the fact that that's like, I mean, there's just so many things that come from this that it feels like God's speaking, that
Absolutely.
there's something more, that, there's something here between you and him and us that is meant to be in this way.
There's no doubt about it. Joey's the first one who made that connection, as much as I hate to give him credit. He said
It blew my mind. It blew my mind.
He said early on that, you could say it, Joey. Go ahead.
I mean, just the fact that Chip's life calling, we'll call it that, is to bridge a gap between how the church understands mental health and mental illness, and his background as a pastor, but then his expertise in the mental health field and helping with understanding. He's telling me and another guy named Roy about the scenario with PJ, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So someone who was struggling with mental illness to the point of taking his life, that's the lungs that you have. So someone who didn't make it through the struggle is keeping Chip alive. I mean, that's just, I don't want to say that's beautiful, because there's some beauty to it, but you can't say beauty without saying also very tragic and horrific. But that's what life is all about. I mean, you worded it earlier. I mean, life is beautiful and life is horrific.
And I wanted to take, because Chip and Colleen have been so compassionate through all of this, I did want to say, and you guys understand this too, but this happened, and it was going to happen either way, and that ended, that tragedy. The fact that we can then take something and extend his life, this was going to happen either way. There's beauty in the fact that we were able to do something really incredible from PJ. His life is extended in a small way here through, the organs that went to 5 different men. That's amazing. It does feel like there's positive in the storm. There's you've got to, I mean, it's right in front of, I won't, it's not like you have to look for this. This is really remarkable,
Right.
Well, Scripture says that all things work together for good. It doesn't say all things are good, but they work together and produce good. And I mean, like I told you, the doctors and other people we've shared it with, they're just like, I've never heard a story like this. How the different, whatever. Did you want to say anything, Colleen? We're probably going to be winding up here shortly.
No, I was just going to say, the doctors also, they have told us numerous times, they go, man, you got some good lungs.
Yeah. I forgot to tell you that, Lauren. They told me I got some really, really good lungs.
Yes.
I love hearing that, Colleen. He was so healthy, and I told Chip, he never smoked a cigarette, never tried any drug. He grew up in a really bad area that was drugs all around and crime, and it's not because of that. He was just so adamant about not doing that, and he ran, and he just ran the Army 10-miler in October. So I mean, he worked out every day, and he was in amazing health, and he loved to rub in that, because I was 7 years younger, but people always thought we were the same age or he was younger, and he loved to point that out. I
think you know this, but I just want to even say it. I mean, you have no reason to be anything other than just deeply, deeply proud of your husband. I could just see the pride coming out as far as hearing about how healthy his lungs are. And I mean, that's the gist of his whole legacy. He got sick and he didn't make it. You have nothing but pride for your,
he was a great man.
Beautiful thing. All right, so why don't we close this? Why don't we? Go ahead, Colleen. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, anything else that I would say just in closing is that we are so excited and beyond grateful that we're going to get to see you in person and your kids and hug you. And we know it's a celebration for us and Chip's new lungs, but we also want to celebrate you and the kids for your generosity and thoughtfulness, because that had to be tough. But we're just so excited to see you in a few weeks.
Yeah, I am too. And like I said, my kids, we took them to see. I took them to see The Sound of Music. It was at the Kennedy Center, and my dad called with free tickets. And they're at the ages where that is not cool. And I was like, well, we're going. And it's just like they didn't want to go. And it was so great. And it was such a great show. And, they walked out and are asking questions about the movie and now want to see the movie. And, I'm thankful they're still young enough where they have to do what I say in a way, because there's so many things they wouldn't do out of not knowing and fear of that expression of emotion. For me, that's the healing. This is hard. I hate crying. I hate the way my face looks right now, but it's part of healing, and I want to heal because I want to be okay. I want to help people through telling the story. I want to learn more about what has happened, because I feel like that's part of my purpose, to be able to educate my kids and help them heal, but educate others, educate police, educate the people making the laws and setting up the systems, the resources to support. I think for them, we're going to have a great time, and we're going to be there to celebrate this too, because it is a celebration. And again, that event happened. We're not celebrating the death of PJ. We're celebrating that his life could be extended, and here it is, and that is a celebration.
That's awesome how you worded that. All right, so can you gift us all with a snapshot Lauren and PJ story? How did you guys meet, and how did y'all fall in love, and when did you know that you were going to marry him?
Well, it took 7 years for me to know. He was we met. It's not a great I had I went to California and got into I rode motorcycles, on the back of motorcycles. I was not driving them out there. It was beautiful on the coastal highway and through the mountain ridges. And I wanted to move out there, and I loved it. And I came back, and I was walking into a restaurant I worked at. I was bartending, and I'm never early, and I was early for my shift. And here's a motorcycle, a sport bike, which is what I loved, parked. And I went over to admire it. No one's there. It's over by itself, and it's an empty parking lot pretty much. It's early. And here comes this guy walking out, and there was nothing else around. And it was so embarrassing because I couldn't lie or act casually like I was obviously at this motorcycle and nothing else is around. And he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'm like, I was just looking at this bike. It looks cool. Anyway, he was in one restaurant with his buddy. They switched and came into the one I was working at. We exchanged numbers. I really didn't like him and I said this in the eulogy too. He was very cocky, and I also had a lot of speeding tickets at the time, and I did not like police officers. So when I found out he was a police officer, I was turned off right away. And somehow he talked me into going on a ride. And, we were so adventurous, both of us. And it was meeting someone who's just as adventurous and kind of crazy. Like I told Chip, we both had a little of that. We live similarly in the way that we lived, and we were, I think you meet that match, and it's kind of scary too, because we both wanted to be in charge and be leaders, and so it was very, could be contentious at times. We had to learn to really respect, and it's been a journey, and I know marriage is a journey for everybody, but I knew him very well, and he knew me very well, and it was beautiful in that way. And to be able to have kids together and see him and them is amazing, physically, and also there's some of their things they say and the way they think. I think that's another thing that's so beautiful. I'm forever grateful to be a mom, and then to have children with him, and for them to carry on who he was. It's amazing.
Thanks for tuning in to Mental Health and the Mission of the Church. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on future conversations. And if you found value in what you heard, we'd love for you to share it with a friend or on social media. It really helps us grow and reach more people just like you. So until next time, let's continue building better partnerships between the mental health community and the mission of the church. Catch you in the next episode, everybody.